Hello and welcome to Last Week in AWS, the show where we look through what AWS released last week and how we can prevent it from possibly happening again. Let's dive in. Amazon AppStream 2.0 introduces client for Mac OS. It only took them, 8 years to realize that maybe Mac users might want to stream applications? Good for them. I'd say better late than never, but I would have been just as willing to see an announcement telling me that they had deprecated the service. Amazon EC2 instances support bandwidth configurations for VPC and EBS. Interesting. You can now allocate bandwidth between how much goes to the instance versus how much goes to the volumes attached to it. Most of you colloquially probably know this as, isn't that Amazon's job? Amazon TimeStream for InfluxDB now supports IPv6 connectivity. Back when they first rolled out their charge almost a year ago for IPv4 addresses, my comment was that I didn't think this was a cash grab, rather it was a move to drive people to IPv6. Then it turned out that they weren't actually releasing IPv6 support with any greater rapidity. So it's hard not to see this as a begrudging acceptance that fine, we have to give up some revenue. Bad luck.
This episode is sponsored in part by my day job, the Duckbill Group. Do you have a horrifying AWS bill? That can mean a lot of things. Predicting what it's going to be, determining what it should be, negotiating your next long-term contract with AWS, or just figuring out why it increasingly resembles a phone number, but nobody seems to quite know why that is. To learn more, visit duckbillgroup.com. Remember, you can't duck the duckbill bill. And my CEO informs me that is absolutely not our slogan.
Amazon Workspace's Thin Client, now available to purchase in India, because apparently India has upset AWS somehow, so now they need to inflict their rage upon them. AWS Backup launches support for search and item-level recovery, and this is huge. More often than not, you don't need to restore an entire environment, you need to restore that one freaking file upon which all depends. AWS Mainframe Modernization now supports connectivity over Internet Protocol version 6. IPv6. This is an amazing technical leap for the mainframe set. If the team behind this is taking requests, I'd like you to carrier pigeons supported push notifications next. AWS Marketplace now supports self-service promotional media on seller product detail pages. Oh good, more self-promotional nonsense. AWS Repost now supports Spanish and Portuguese, under the operating theory that since nobody's using the damn thing, maybe if they support additional languages, that might change, never bothering to look at the giant underlying flaw in that the experience is crappy. AWS Resource Explorer supports 59 new resource types. That's right, for the thing that's supposed to be the single unifying point that shows everything in your AWS account, it still doesn't include things. The only thing I found that gets everything you care about is the bill. Strangely, services are not released without billing support.
Here at the Duckbill Group, one of the things we do with, my day job is we help negotiate AWS contracts. We just recently crossed $5 billion of contract value negotiated. It solves for fun problems, such as how do you know that your contract that you have with AWS is the best deal you can get? How do you know you're not leaving money on the table? How do you know that you're not doing what I do on this podcast and on Twitter constantly and sticking your foot in your mouth? To learn more, come chat at duckbillgroup.com. Optionally, I will also do podcast voice when we talk about it. Again, that's duckbillgroup.com.
AWS offers a self-service feature to update business names on AWS invoices. I'll let you know if they let me change mine to Shitpost Industries. Announcing CloudFormation support for AWS Parallel Computing Service. I used to see a lot more of these sorts of announcements, but then they started releasing everything with CloudFormation support, as God intended. I wonder what happened here. Announcing node health monitoring and auto repair for Amazon EKS. That's a little concerning. Someone should check on the EKS team. They seem to have accidentally released a new feature that doesn't cost extra money. That's out of character for them lately. And that's a wrap. Sort of a weird title until you realize what it is. Jeff Barr, after 20 years, is finally stepping down as the head blogger at AWS to focus on other projects at the company. It is impossible to overstate the impact he had an entire generation of developers. I hope he enjoys whatever he works on next. Lord knows I'll miss having him around writing about these things. Who's going to explain this stuff to me now? Best practices for creating a VPC for Amazon RDS for DB2. We are now a year in from RDS for DB2 coming out, and I requested information from IBM on how to spin one up and have still not gotten a response. That's some IBM latency right there. How the Amazon Time Hub team handled disruption in AWS DMS CDC task caused by Oracle reset logs, part 3. I don't even know what to say at this. It must be riveting. You couldn't tell the story in the first 2 parts. I thought they'd said all that they needed to say, and I'm sure the highly specific circumstances about this are of rapt interest to both of the people who were involved. How to detect and monitor Amazon Simple Storage Service S3 access with AWS CloudTrail and Amazon CloudWatch. What this article doesn't mention is that the data event in CloudTrail costs 20 times more than the event that its monitoring does. That is not an exaggeration. Enforce resource configuration to control access to new features with AWS. This is an incredibly deep article discussing a very complex thing. But there's a much easier way. Simply run your workload in a non-flagship AWS region, and new features basically won't come your way for years after they're first released. If you really want to slow that roll, use GovCloud. And finally, maximizing your cloud journey, engaging an AWS solutions architect. Look, these people work very hard, but the way that title is framed makes it sound like I should be genuflecting harder, or at least sitting on the curb and clapping as the AWS solutions architects come by. What makes that so weird is that I don't think I've ever met a solutions architect who saw themselves that way. They're some of those humble, amazing people who work at AWS, and this title just makes them sound like buffoons. Don't do that, please. And that's what happened last week at AWS. I'm cloud economist Corey Quinn. Please stay salty.